Hey everyone, so welcome to this webinar on data sufficiency, how to identify and avoid trap answers. Before I get started, I would like to know whether you can hear me clearly. So if you can just put in the chat box very quickly, a quick yes or no, whether you can hear me loud and clear. And if I get a sufficient number of yeses, I can start the session. So those of you who are present, if you can hear me loud and clear, just put a yes in the comment box. Okay, great. So I can see all of you can hear me, which is great. So let's get started, guys. So I'll start by first very briefly introducing myself. Those of you attending my webinar for the first time, my name is Saquib, and I'm the product lead and one of the co-founders at GMAT. And I'm also the principal architect of the whole design that you see on the GMAT platform. So if you haven't tried it yet, I would highly recommend trying it out. Apart from this, apart from creating products, I also like teaching, especially quant, and I've been in this tech industry for close to 10 years now. And I've taken the GMAT myself. I have a Q15 quant. Those of you from India, you might even know CAT. I've taken that too, and I have a 99.98 quant too. As I told you, I love teaching quant, and one of the main things which I focus on is whenever I take these sessions is to ensure to simplify the concepts as much as possible, especially areas where everyone faces some problem or the other, like be it a permission combination or data sufficiency or coordinate geometry, whatever it is. My main goal at any point of time, whenever I take any webinar, is to provide you with a structure that can help you. Solve the questions easily and give you a structure that you can apply to as many questions as possible. Okay. So as far as the webinar is concerned, we are going to divide the webinar into two parts. The first part obviously would be the main part, which would be about go between 60 to 80 minutes, where I'll be covering the main agenda of this webinar. And then I'll keep about 10 minutes at the end in case you have any questions related to GMAT prep, quant prep, or any questions that is related to how we can help you prepare for GMAT. Feel free to ask me those questions at the end of the webinar. Okay, so let's jump right into it without wasting any more time, and let's talk about uh, why do students falter in DS questions. Now, this is something whenever I take a DS webinar, I like to start off with this question, because I want to understand from you, what do you think, in your opinion, is the number one reason? Because there could be multiple reasons, but what do you think are the various reasons because of a student falter in a DS question or fall into a trap in a DS question? So those of you who have tried DS questions, why do you falter? Why do you fall in a trap? What do you think is the main reason behind it? Any inputs? And again, there's no right or wrong answer here. There could be multiple answers. I'm going to focus on a few of them, but I want to know your opinion. And once again, you can put your responses in the chat box. When you solve a DS question and you get it wrong, have you tried and figured out what is the reason because of which you make a mistake in a DS question? Okay, I'll wait for another 10-15 seconds. Come on, guys. If you've done DS questions, you must be facing any problem, right? Okay. Akaki says, not identifying traps. Okay, so you're saying that when you're solving question, you don't even realize that you're falling for a trap. Okay. Okay, anything else? Questions limitation. What do you mean? What do you exactly mean by that, Ashay? Questions limitations? Do you not understand the question? Is that because of which you fall for the trap? Could that be one of the reasons? Okay, let me give you the reasons. See, the number one reason, I think, because of which you falter in a DS question, and again, this might seem like really obvious reason, but a lot of times you end up making a mistake in the questions because you don't know that question, the concept really well. Okay, so if there's lack of conceptual clarity, then then there's a very good chance that you might end up making a mistake in that question. So I would highly recommend making sure that whatever you do, be it a DS question or a PS question, that's like the number one prerequisite. Make sure that you have 100% conceptual clarity of that particular topic. Okay. The second thing, and I think this is the most important aspect, especially in case of DS questions, because like in case of PS, you have five options, right? All those five options are definite options, and you get a particular answer. So you know whether you when you're marking that, there's a good chance that you're getting it correct. But in DS, there's a number of times you don't know the exact answer. You're trying to draw a lot of inferences, and on the basis of that, you're marking your answer, right? So if you don't do a full analysis of the question, or if you don't apply the right kind of skills that are needed to do this analysis, then there's a good chance that you might end up falling for the trap. And don't worry, I'm going to take examples to help you explain what I'm trying to tell you out here. Okay. So if any of this seems vague, don't worry about it. I'll elaborate it. The third reason is, in my opinion, I've seen a number of students doing this thing that they read the question stem, okay, whatever is given, and without doing any analysis, which is a lack of thorough analysis, they simply move on to the statements. Okay, and then even without solving the statements, okay, trying to look at what kind of answers that you can get, or whether you can get the answer or not, the kind of guess, okay, statement one looks like it is not sufficient. So whenever you fall you fall for that kind of a trap, that you look at a statement or you look at an equation, and by just looking, if you're trying to figure out whether the answer is, whether the statement is sufficient or not, then that is one of the another reason because of which you'll fall for a trap. Because GMAT does know a lot of times people just look at the statements and try to mark the answer. And these especially, I've seen a lot of C traps, E traps, which are set. When I say C traps, E trap, that means they would want you to mark C as the answer when C won't be the answer. Okay, they would want you to mark E as the answer when E won't be the answer. So these kind of traps are also set in the exam, which obviously you need to take care of. Okay. However, since this is solely this webinar is solely on talking about the different kind of traps, so I'm just going to focus on how the lack of analysis or being lazy or a little bit of conceptual clarity might lead to fall for a trap. So what I've done is obviously there are a number of ways of categorizing these traps, and in fact, on GMAT Club also you'll find things like C trap, D trap, E trap. These kind of traps are definitely there, which you can look at it. But what I thought was, let me categorize it in a slightly different way. I try to generalize it even more, and and this is the five kind of different traps which I think are quite common, and you can make a note of it because I think this is very important. One is the constraint trap. Okay, what do I mean by a constraint trap? What I mean by that is, in sometimes in the question, you might be given certain information, like they'll tell you if x is an integer, and then they'll give you the question. Okay, so this is known as a constraint or an additional information. Why do we call it a constraint? Because the final answer after solving statement 1 and 2 will be dependent on this constraint. Okay, if you miss on this constraint, or if you forget about this constraint, there's a good chance that you'll end up marking the incorrect answer. Okay, so that is what I know as a constraint trap. And this is a very common kind of trap both in DS and PS, where you miss out on information. You think it's trivial. They're just telling you x is an integer, which is almost every time given. So you discard it without realizing that that might help you get the answer. Okay. The second kind of trap, which in my opinion is a multiple variable trap. Now, what do I mean by a multiple variable trap? Again, you might be given a question uh, and whenever you look at these statements, you'll realize that there are a lot of variables involved in it: x, y, z, so on and so forth. And this kind of as I told you, there's a tendency to just guess and look at the question stem and decide what you need to do, right? So you might look at these statements and you might think, okay, there are three variables, two equations. Maybe, just maybe, I might not get me the answer. So let me mark A as my answer option. And I'm just giving you a hypothetical example. There are the examples also there where there's something else might be the answer. But the point is that there might be multiple variables involved, which might lead you to feel that, okay, the answer might come or might not come. And that is a trap that you might be falling into. Okay, and for each of one of these types that I'm showing you, I am going to take up one question each for all of them and then you'll get a better idea about it. The third is a multiple trap answer. What do I mean by that is that in DS questions, especially when you're starting new, there'll be a number of times when you will end up getting multiple answers. right? So after solving a particular statement, let's say they're asking about is x an integer or what is the value of x. Both kind of question can come. Either a yes no question can come or what is the value kind of question can come. And in such cases, after solving a particular statement, you might get multiple answers for the value of x. Okay. Now, there is again a tendency where we feel that, okay, if multiple answers are coming, then there's a good chance that I would be, I will not be getting my answer because I'm getting multiple answers. However, there are a few cases, and there are a few cases in yes no kind of questions where even getting multiple answers can help you, decide what will be the correct answer. You should not discard a statement just because you're getting multiple answers. I've seen people do that and they fall for the trap. Okay, so definitely going to cover a touch upon that kind of question also. Think of it like I'm already giving you the hint what kind of traps you might fall into. So when you're doing these questions, you can be aware of these traps and realize, okay, yeah, this kind of trap is also there. Simplification trap is self-explanatory. Simplification is obviously required when you're doing a lot of algebra questions where you might be given expressions which you need to simplify and get the answer. Now, while doing simplification, two things can happen. The expression that might be given to you might be very weird looking, tough, difficult to simplify. And in those cases also, there's a very good chance that you might end up not solving it fully. Not solving it fully, or you might end up making a calculation mistake. Either of these two things happen, and the GMAT depends on that you might not be able to simplify it properly, which might again lead you to choose an answer which might not be the correct one. Okay. And the last kind is the translation trap. And this, I think, is one of the most, I would say, common apart from the first four that I've mentioned. And this is a very fairly, you'll see this a lot in word problem kind of questions, where you're given a lot of text, a few statements. And since you're given a lot of text in the question stem, you end up reading it very quickly without even drawing the right inferences, that what does this particular part of the question stem mean, what does this particular part of the question stem mean, do I need to draw any inference, do I need to set up any equation to solve the question. Okay, so these kind of traps are laid down in case of a translation based question where GMAT expects you to miss out on certain information, or it expects you to kind of get confused on how to set up the equation, what variables to take, what inference do we need to draw. Those kind of questions will be going in your mind, and you might end up wasting a lot of time and then again panicking, and that will lead to an incorrect answer. Okay, so apart from, as I told you, C, D, E traps, which are always discussed in most of the webinars, I thought let's try and focus on these kind of 5 types of traps, which I don't think you'll see discussed very frequently. And once you understand these types, you can be aware of it while you're solving questions, making sure that you don't fall for any one of these traps. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to take up 5 questions, one for each type. The order might be different in which the question will come. I will not be telling you what that particular question, what kind of trap that particular question is testing you on. Okay, so that is something for you to figure out. And if you want, you can just solve the question the way you solve any DS question, and then later on realize whether you got it correct or not. So how it's going to work is that I'm going to give you the question. Okay, so the next slide has the question in it, and I'll give you about 2 minutes to solve that question. Okay, and I would request all of you not to post the answer once you get the answer. Wait for the 2 minute to pass. In fact, I'll let you know when the time's up. Okay, so when I tell you the time's up, then you can start posting your answer in the chat box. And that is how we are going to proceed for each and every question. Also, keep in mind the idea here is not to solve overly difficult questions. So I have the kind of questions that I have will mostly revolve between 600 to 700. Some of them would be easy, some of them would be difficult, little difficult. But each of these questions will definitely help you understand these 5 kind of traps, which you can apply later on in different questions. Okay, so let's start off with the first question, guys. I hope you're excited. So this is the question on your screen. You have about 2 minutes to solve this question. When the time is up, I'll let you know. But before that, I would request you not to put your answer on the chat box. Okay, so give it a shot, guys. Okay, guys, last 30 seconds, and then you can start posting your responses. Okay, guys, those of you are done, you can start posting a response. Let me know what do you think is the answer of this particular question. And once again, don't worry about whether it's correct or incorrect. The idea is to participate, realize, whether you're going in the right direction or not. So I would encourage all of you to let me know your answer. Okay, I already have one answer, A. What about the others? Okay, Priyanshu also says A. That's good. Okay, I'll wait for another 10 seconds and I'll start the discussion. Okay, okay, let me start the discussion then. So most of you correctly identified it that it is the constraint trap, forgetting the constraint trap that is set in this particular question. Now, let me talk about what is the constraint that I'm talking about. So what I usually do is I kind of first of all jot down all the information that is given in the question stem very, very clearly. Okay, it might seem that I'm eating up on time by reading it slowly, carefully, but believe me, it helps in the long run. So what you do is you read it carefully. It's given that M is a 3-digit positive odd integer. Okay, so M is a number which is positive. Okay, it's a 3-digit number. So if you want, you can write it as ABC. It's a 3-digit number. Okay, it's positive, that's fine, and it's an odd integer. So if it's an odd integer, then you should write down that the units digit, right? If it's an odd integer, then the units digit would be either 1 or 3 or 5 or 7 or 9, right? Because for a number to be odd, you can have numbers like this: 21, 25, 27, 29, 23. These are all odd numbers, okay? Numbers which are not divisible by 2. So what do I need to find out? What is the units digit of M? So what I'm looking for is the value of C, okay? So it's a positive integer, 3-digit number, it is odd, so it can take up these values. C can take up these values. I need to figure out of these 5, what is the value of C. Now, whenever you get a question of what is the value kind of a question, you're always looking for a unique answer. So if you're not aware of this, please keep in mind that you're looking for a single answer, okay? With that in mind, you can then move on to the individual statements. So let's take up the first statement. The first statement is that the product of hundreds, tens, and unit stages is 192. By the way, I just noticed in the chat box a few of you are saying that the answer is E. Uh, if you marked E as an answer, then guys, you did fall for the constraint trap. And let's understand why. So the first statement is product of hundreds, tens, and units. What is your hundreds, tens, and units digits? They're A, B, and C, right? So I can write A times B times C is equal to 192. Now, the moment you write that, don't just leave it here. Don't just think that, okay, this is not going to help. There are a lot of values possible. So let's discard this, chuck it. Don't do that. Okay. Remember that this A, B, C, there's another additional information. Once you write this down, it should directly click in your mind is that A, B, C are single digit positive numbers. Single digit numbers, right? They are all single digit numbers. So if the product of ABC is 192, that means I need to break down 192 in such a way that I can write it as a product of 3 numbers. Okay, and then you can start prime factorizing if you want to. So you can divide this by 3 and then you will get 64, and then 8. It's up to you, how do you want to divide it. You can do 4 times 16 if you want to, and then if you want to split it further, you can do that. Or you can, even if you want, you can write 64 as directly 8 times 8. Okay, so you're getting 3 numbers. So you can say 192 can be written as 3 times 8 times 8. But don't stop here, okay? You can, if you want to, think of other possible cases also. Is there any other case that is possible where, this 192 can be broken down and written as three different single digit numbers? And if you'll notice that if you just, split it and multiply it 2 and 3, you'll get 6 times 4 times 8. So this is another possibility, right? But can you tell me, uh, can I consider both these cases? Are both these cases valid? If yes, why? If no, why? Akaki says it's not odd. Correct, exactly. See, understand, if you take this case, remember the constraint. See, whenever you get an answer, before discarding it, now what should be the process? I'm talking about the process. Once you get two answers, don't just discard it and say, hey, I'm getting two different answers. So three-digit number could be 388, 883, 648, 468, lot of possibilities. You might think in this way and discard it. But before discarding, I would request you to kindly go back and look at your steps and see, is every condition being satisfied? M should be positive. Okay, all cases M is positive. Now M should be an odd number, so C should be either 1, 3, 5, 7, or 9. And you can notice, if that is the case, then only this particular case, when A is 8, B is 8, and C is 3, is the only possible case. You cannot take 6, 4, and 8 because none of these numbers are odd. And you definitely need an odd number at the end because it's an odd number. So you will discard this case directly. You'll say this is not possible. 3 is the only even number in this particular product. So 3 I have to place at the last place, and 8 times 8 needs to be split out here only. Okay, so from here I can get my answer. How did I get this answer? I got this answer because I focused on my constraint. If I don't focus on my constraint, I'll be keeping both these answers with me. I would discard A and D, and maybe after combining also I would end up marking my answer as E. Okay, so I hope it's clear why E won't be the answer, why B won't be the answer. So E is a very common choice in this case. So statement 1 is sufficient, so your answer would either be A or D, so you can discard the other cases. Now, obviously, second statement is very easy and very trivial also. They're just telling me that the tens digit is 8. But I'm interested in the unit state. I'm interested in the value of C. And the second statement is not giving me any information about the value of C. So you can simply discard it and say that this is not sufficient. So the correct answer in this case is going to be option A. Okay. So I hope it's clear. What do I mean by forgetting constraint trap? What is the process that you need to follow before deciding whether you should discard a case or accept a case, or say whether a statement is sufficient or not sufficient? Either keep in your mind at all times what are the constraints, but sometimes in the exam it might be difficult. So if you have written it down, just quickly check whether all the constraints are being satisfied or not. Okay, because the constraint might help you get rid of some of the answer choices. Okay. The learning takeaway is obviously number one, which I've already told you, don't forget the constraint. If M is an odd integer, you have to consider the unit digit as odd. Another thing, and this is a general DS skill, is you should be comfortable creating cases also. So if you're not writing all the cases, and maybe if you got stuck with only one of the case and did not think of the other one, then that's also wrong, because you might get this question as a PS question also, and you should be comfortable making these kind of cases. Okay, and obviously if you don't follow for the trap, there are other traps that you can fall for. You might fall for a C trap, you might fall for an E trap, the number of traps that you might fall for. Okay, so obviously make sure that you draw all the pertinent inferences also. Like for example, how did I come to the conclusion that statement 1, I need to work with statement 1? I came to that conclusion because I drew the inference that A, B, C are single digit numbers. So obviously I need to break down 192 into three single digit numbers. This is not given. You have to implicitly infer it. Okay, if you don't infer it, then also you'll fall for a trap. But the main thing which I want you to take away from here is that make sure that you don't forget the constraint at all. Okay, so I hope this is clear. If you have any questions, guys, please feel free to ask. I'll wait for about 10 seconds, and if I don't see any question on my screen, then I am going to move on to the next question. Okay, any questions, any doubts in this one? Okay, I don't see anything in the chat box. I'm moving on to the next question then, guys. Here's the next one. Again, take 2 minutes, solve the question. Don't put your answer in the chat box. I'll let you know when your time's up. Okay. try out this one. Okay, guys, last 30 seconds, and then you can start posting your responses. Okay, guys, the 2 minutes are up. Once again, don't worry if your answer is correct or incorrect. Just tell me what you think could be the answer. Okay, Akaki says A, Gagan says C, Gautam says A. Okay, a lot of A's. One C. Anything else? Anyone else? Okay, Akaki says translation trap. Well, this could be categorized into multiple categories, by the way. Uh, I kind of categorize this. I would agree that it is a translation trap also, but the main agenda behind giving this question was, to talk about the multiple variable trap. Okay. Though yes, you can categorize it as a translation trap also. In case if you don't set up the right equation, you would end up making the mistake. But um, let me talk about it. Then you realize why I've categorized it as a two variable trap or a multiple variable trap. So once again, guys, let's start off by reading it carefully. Okay, I'll break down the question stem and jot down all the relevant information, do my pre-analysis, and then look at each statement. So the question step says that Ryan was driving from city A to B, which is 120 miles. And I usually draw a diagram. Whether it's helpful, not helpful, doesn't matter. But I like to visualize it. So I kind of write it like this, put a 120, something like this. Okay. He drove the first D miles in TR. So the first D miles, so let's call this as D miles, okay, in TR. So I'll write a T here, which tells me the time. And then next, so let me rub this, not important anymore, 120 minus D miles in 0.75 TRs, okay. What I need to find out is and I've written here, find out the average speed at which he drove 120 by D mile is what percent. Ideally, I would have written it down, okay, but I'm just reading it just to let you know how a student might have solved and made a mistake. So find out the average speed at which it drove 120 minus d mile is what percent more than the average speed at which he drove the first d miles. Okay, so I'm looking at the average speed of when I'm traveling when I'm covering 120 by d by average speed in case when I'm covering d distance. Okay, and I'm looking at what percent more. So something like this. Okay. Now, what usually happens is, as I told you, since sometimes we get lazy and we want to mark the answer very quickly, we look at the information given to us And if some of you might have drawn the diagram, you look at the diagram and you might think, okay, I have a D here, two Ds. So I need to know the split. So I need the value of D. And to find out the speed, I would need the value of T. So once I have the value of T, I can find out the individual speed in both these cases. And then I can find out my answer. That's the thought process which is generally there. And this might happen if you don't do your pre-analysis, okay? And they will typically, what will do the very, they'll put these two options like this. Very tempting, right? You look at this, you see D and T, you feel the answer has to be C, which is incorrect. Okay, so typical C trap because of the two variable kind of a trap that is that put here. What you should ideally do is before going to the statement, you should set up your equation. Okay, so if they're talking about the average speed of 120 minus d when the person traveled, or when Ryan traveled 120 minus d miles, you write it down. Distance upon time, 120 minus d by 0.75 t. You write down the average speed in the first case also. You write it as d upon t. Okay, I'm looking for percentage more. So ideally how it works is value 1 minus value 2 divided by value, depending on, I'm finding it with respect to D, right? But divided by value 2 multiplied by 100. This is the formula that you are going to use. But what happens is that whenever I'm looking for a ratio, I kind of break it down like this because I don't want to do the subtraction. Okay. So if I want to find out the percentage more, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this. So I'm just telling you how I got this expression. Okay. So instead of writing it percentage more like this, I'm breaking it down and writing it this way. Now, when you put it, so what you do is you substitute these values that you've got here, substitute it. 120 minus d by 0.75 t divided by d by t minus 1 times 100. And notice one thing, that the t would get cancelled out. You would be left with 120 minus d by 0.75 d minus 1 times 100. And see, I haven't even gone to these statements. I'm just doing a pre-analysis, and it might end up taking me 1.5 minutes also doing all of this. Okay, but doesn't matter, because by the end of my pre-analysis, once I'm done with my pre-analysis, I know what I'm looking for. Okay, this is the trap that you need to, you have to avoid it by looking at two variables and marking as the answer. And I hope now you'll appreciate it why I'm talking about pre-analysis and why you should not fall for the two variable or multi-variable trap. Set up your equation, translate it properly, and then you'll realize to find out your answer, just draw the inference that find D. If you know the value of D, you can get your answer easily. And now when you go to this question stem, you look at the first statement, it gives you the value of D. You'll say, hey, this is sufficient. I just need to put 40 here and I'll get my answer. And statement 2 gives you the value of T, which again is not required because it gets cancelled out. So the value of D is not important. The value of T is not important. So you'll say that this is not sufficient. So you can notice my pre-analysis, I'm taking time in my pre-analysis, but while analyzing my statement, I'm hardly taking any time because I know what I'm looking for. Okay, so I hope it's clear that the correct answer in this case is going to be option A. And I hope in future, whenever you're doing a DS question where you feel like, you get that feeling that I need both the variables, both variables are given, both variables are there in the statement. Let me mark C as my answer. Pause. Ask yourself, hey, am I falling for a trap? Did I do my pre-analysis? Because if you did not, you should do and double check and then only mark your answer. If you feel that after setting up all the equation, if you feel that no, I need both the variables, then mark C as your answer. Otherwise, obviously, it's either B, A, or B. Okay, is this clear, guys? A quick yes. I hope you understood this properly. Any questions? Any doubts? Yes, Gagan. So make sure that you go till the end. Simplify it. Simplify it till a point where you're sure that you cannot cancel anything at all. Okay. Make sure that Gautam, it doesn't matter. I'm just trying to show you the convention. Okay. I'm just trying to show you the convention in which you need to write it down. It doesn't matter. So basically, if you ask me how to translate it, it is translated in this way, that the average speed of 120 is what percent more. That means A 120 minus D is more. So I would be writing it as 120 minus D minus A of D. Okay, divided by more than. So I'm finding it with respect to the average speed of D. So divided by D. So instead of solving this, I'm breaking it down and writing as this. So this V1, V2 was just a sample random example to show you how you need to write it down. Doesn't matter whether it's V1, V2, don't worry about that much. Ideally, the exact question that is there, you should be able to translate it in this way. Okay, I hope it's clear. Okay, so let's move on to the third question, guys. Once again, I'll give you 2.5 minutes for this one because you might need some time to simplify. So take 2.5 minutes for this one and then we'll discuss this question. Okay. Okay, guys, last 30 seconds. You can start posting your answers now. But if you remember in the starting, I told you that to solve a DS question, you always need good conceptual clarity, right? And if you noticed in the last question, in this question, you need to have a very good conceptual clarity also. If you don't know how to write average speed, you won't be able to solve the last question correctly, previous question that we did. And this one also, if you're not comfortable with factorials, and if you don't know how to simplify factorials easily, then also you're going to have a hard time solving this question. So I hope you appreciate this fact that it is like really, really, really important to be comfortable with the concepts also. Okay. Okay. So far I have one answer from Gautam who says the answer should be D. Okay. What about the others? Okay. Kaki says A. I'll wait for another. Prashant also says A. Okay. I'll wait for another 10 seconds and then I'll start the discussion. By the way, at least I have in each of these questions I'm discussing, somebody is falling for the trap. So yes, Akaki, you're correct that in this case, the trap that we have set that I've set here is the simplification trap, and the expressions, both the expressions look so similar that there is a good chance that after solving one of them, you might just say, "Hey, the second one also looks the same, so let me not simplify it. I might end up getting the same answer. So let me mark the answer as item D." So let's talk about once again how to approach it, and again, if I'm saying it's a simplification trap, doesn't mean that I don't need to look at the question stem. I don't need to jot down everything. You need to do that every time. Okay. So here also I'll write it down that p is a positive integer. So I'll write down really well p positive integer such that p is greater than 5. So I'm going to kind of write down values like this also for 6, 7, 8. These are the values that p can take. Now my question is p a prime number? Okay. Is p prime? And this is a yes no kind of question, guys. Okay. So remember, yes, in a yes no DS kind of questions, it is not always necessary that whatever they're asking, you need to get that only. Okay. So if they're asking me, is P a prime number? And let's say after solving a particular statement, I get P is equal to say 8. But if I get a unique answer, okay, if I get an answer which tells me very clearly no, then also I have an answer. Okay, understand? So you just need to say yes or no. As long as as long as you're able to say one answer confidently, that means that statement is sufficient. Okay. However, if you would have had, let's say, for example, from statement two, if you would have got p is equal to 8 and p is equal to 7, then your answer could be either no or yes, right? So the moment you get two different answers from a particular statement, then only you should say that that particular statement is not sufficient. Okay, so please keep this in mind that this is like really important for a yes no kind of question, because this also sometimes, since you're so engrossed in trying to figure out whether p is prime or not, you get fixated on prime. And the moment you don't get a prime number, you say it's not sufficient, which is incorrect. Okay, so keeping all of this in mind, we'll take up the first statement, and let me write it here because I'll need a lot of space. In fact, let me tell you one small thing about factorial, especially those of you who are, might be working with this, haven't done a lot of factorials. So if you have given 5 factorial, then that simply means 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5, right? But a simplification trick that you need to know is that 5 factorial can be written as 4 factorial times 5. 5. Think about it. What is this? 1 times 2 times 3 times 4? It is 4 factorial, right? So I can write it as 4 factorial times 5. Now, if I want, I can write 4 factorial as 3 factorial times 4. Again, think about it. I can take the bracket here and I can write it as 3 factorial times 4. If I want to break down 3 factorial further, I hope you understand that we can write it as 2 factorial times 3 times 4 times 5. So you can break down a factorial into multiple parts sequentially. Okay. Similarly, if you have a variable p, okay, let's say if you are given p factorial, if you want to break it down, notice what did I do? I wrote 5 factorial 5 as is, and I wrote a number which is 1 less. Okay. So what is 1 less than p? It's p minus 1, right? So I can write p factorial as p times p minus 1 factorial. Okay. If I want to break it further, I'll go one below it. So I'll write p minus 1 times p minus 2 factorial, and so on and so forth. So I can keep on breaking it down as much as I want to. Okay, so this concept should be perfectly clear, because that can help you simplify this expression very quickly. So if you look at the first statement, which is p minus 1 factorial divided by p minus 2 factorial times p minus 1 minus p factorial times p minus 3 factorial times p minus 2 is equal to p plus 1 factorial times. And again, don't get bogged down whenever you look at whenever you get such an expression. Always work with one expression at a time. So look at this. See, you have p minus 2, p minus 1. In the numerator, you have p plus 1. So if you want to cancel p minus 2, p minus 1, you should infer that if I have p plus 1 here and I want to reach here, I need to break down my p plus 1 into something like this. So I write it as p plus 1, p minus 1 times p minus 2 factorial divided by p minus 2 factorial times p minus 1. And what this does is that it helps us cancel these two terms. So this part of this expression, this simply becomes p plus 1 times p. Okay. Similarly, you have p. You need to reach p minus 3. So what you'll do, you write p minus 1, p minus 2, and then you'll stop at p minus 3 factorial. Okay. You'll get p minus, you already have p minus 3 times p minus 2. So now you can cancel this term. And then you'll be left with p times p minus 1. So notice I'm working with one expression at a time without worrying about anything else. Here you have p plus 1, you have p minus 1. So break p plus 1. P plus 1, p minus 1 factorial, p minus 1 factorial times p. 5. So this will get cancelled out and you'll be left with p times p plus 1 upon 5. Now, it's a very easy expression. You can work with it. P square plus p minus p square minus of minus plus p is equal to p square plus p upon 5. Now notice plus p square minus p square gets cancelled out. You are left with 2p is equal to p square plus p upon 5. You take 5 to the other side and write it as 10p is equal to p square plus p, or p square is equal to 9p. Now, since p is a positive integer, remember that we have this information with us. What we can do is to find out the value of p, we can divide by p both sides. It's a positive integer, so I don't need to worry about p being 0. And this will give me the value of p as 9. Now, notice I'm getting 9. Now, the question was, is p a prime number? And I'll be able to answer that no, p is not a prime number. Okay, but I'm being able to give an answer. So that is why I'll say that this statement is sufficient. So obviously my answer would be either A or D. So you can cancel the others out. So I hope the simplification part is clear. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. That's number one. Number two, I hope the yes, no kind of part is also clear, the trap that you might fall for. Okay. Now, at this point of time, a lot of students might think that, okay, I might get the same kind of result from here. And in a hurry, or just because you don't want to solve the whole thing again, you might end up choosing D as your answer, which again is a trap. Similar looking expression gives you the feeling that D might be sufficient. However, when we simplify it, and if I look at this term, okay, I'm doing it directly here. I have a p plus 1 and a p minus 1 here. So what I can do is I can break p plus 1 as p plus 1, p minus 1 factorial by p minus 1 factorial times p plus 1 factorial. Notice p minus 1, oh, sorry, not a factorial, my bad. P minus 1 factorial, p plus 1 get cancelled out, and you're left with p. You can break down p as p times p minus 1 times p minus 2 factorial, p minus 2 factorial times p minus 1. Again, notice this gets cancelled out, and then you'll end up getting p. So left hand side gives you 2p. Okay. Now let's look at the right hand side. Now, don't stop here also. Those of you got 2p and then stop thinking, hey, I'll get something on the right hand side also. You end up making a mistake. Now, notice in this case, the only thing that is different is that the bigger number is at the bottom. You have 3p at the bottom and 3p minus 1 in the numerator. So you are not going to break the numerator down. What you can do is you can break the denominator down. So you can take 3p times 3p minus 1 factorial. Because if you look at the number line, 3p is here and 3p minus 1 is here. Okay. So you cancel this out, you cancel out one of the p's, you cancel out this, and notice on the right hand side also, you're left with 2p. So you're getting 2p is equal to 2p, which makes sense, right? LHS is equal to RHS. But you need the value of p, and that is something that you cannot get from here, okay? Because both the sides are the same. So that's not helping you get the value of p. So you will say that this is not sufficient. And hence the correct answer would be A. Okay, so I have a question here. Diluza is saying, I have a problem with time, how to be quick on them. So you must have realized this when I was doing this question, when I gave you this question, I told you that I will be giving you 2.5 minutes for this one. Okay, the reason I said that is because this is a question which will require time. Okay, I'll tell you how to reduce time also, don't worry. But keep in mind that not all questions are meant to be solved in 2 minutes. So if you have been taught that if somebody has told you, hey, solve every question in 2 minutes, that's wrong. Nobody does that. Even I can't do it. Okay, there will be questions which you'll be able to do in 1 minute. There will be questions that you will be do it in 1.5 minutes. There will be questions that you'll be taking 2.5 minutes to do it. So ideally, if you're trying to improve your time, don't just try and improve your time in difficult questions. That's my advice to everyone. If you're trying to improve your timing in general, try to improve your time in easy and medium questions also. So those are the questions that ideally you should be able to do quickly, so that the time that you save from there can be used for difficult questions. Okay, that's number one thing that you should take care of to reduce time, okay, or to manage time better. And the second thing which I would want to say is that, see, and the answer is pretty simple. Okay, so don't think, hey, it's just giving me a generic answer, but that's a fact. The reason that we have been able, we are able to solve these very quickly, the way I'm very intuitively writing these things, is because of practice. So ideally, if there's any type of question that you struggle with or you're not good at, you want to improve in it, you need to ensure that you practice those kind of questions as much as possible, so that you improve your speed on those questions. So long story short, number one, try to improve your time in all type of questions, not only in difficult ones. In difficult ones, in some difficult ones, mentally accept it that you might take a little more time. Okay, if you want to reduce your time in a particular type or topic, then ideally first of all figure out what topics that you're not doing well in, where you are taking more time, and practice more questions from those topics, so that you get used to the thinking process, or you get used to the methodology to solve those kind of questions. Okay, I hope that answers the query. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask. So obviously, learning and takeaway is that you should know how to simplify a fact. As I told you in the starting, that if the concept is not good, you will face a problem while solving such questions. Also, I've also mentioned this now, that if a yes no type of question, make sure that you may get an answer as no also, and you should accept that. Okay. I'll wait for another 10-15 seconds. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask in the chat box. In the meantime, I'll very quickly make an announcement, and I'll take just a minute, that if you're liking these webinars, guys, and if if you want to attend more webinars like this, prepare GMAT in a very structured manner, then I would highly recommend looking at our live online course. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share the link with you all. So we usually run our crash course sessions, which are like live classes, where we discuss each and every topic in detail. Okay, so there are about 25 sessions. Here, what I'm doing is I'm picking up 5 questions and doing it, right? But if you want to learn how to solve all kind of primes questions, or different kind of, say, in SE modifier questions, how to solve different kind of assumption questions, then we take up each and every topic. In fact, we club just 2 or 3 topics in one live webinar, and we conduct it for 2.5 hours, and we discuss all different kind of questions. So if you're interested in joining a live class, if you want structure in your prep, and we conduct these classes over the weekend, we give you proper plans for each and every week. So if you are somebody who wants to get a mentor who can help you improve your approach, improve your timing, then I would highly recommend looking at the crash course, and the link has already been shared. And just in case, if you want to talk to us before taking a call, I'm sharing a Calendly link also. So if you want, you can book a call with us, and this call is completely free, so you don't worry about it. And then you can, you know we'll help you out. We'll let you know how we can help you out prepare for GMAT. Okay. So with this, guys, let's move on to the next question. We have 2 more to do, and here's the fourth one. In this question, I'll be giving you again 2.5 minutes. I think 2.5 minutes should be enough. So give your best. Okay. Okay, guys, last 30 seconds. You can start posting your responses now if you're done. Okay, Prashant thinks the answer should be A. What about the others? Kaki is also saying A. Okay. Okay, I have two C's. And guys, can you let me know your approach? What did you do? I'm curious. Did you plug in values? Did you plug in a few prime numbers to check? Did you plug in a few non-primes? Or did you use a methodical way to solve this question? And if yes, what method did you use? Okay, 3 A's, 3 C's. Okay. Okay, more C's now. Okay, Jivala is saying plugged a few non-primes. Kaki says I use integral system. Okay. By the way, plugging in is something which I usually don't advocate. I don't promote that you should use that. Ideally, you should use number line method, VV line method, whatever that terminology you want to use, that to solve such questions. Now, those of you who are not aware of, the number line method or the VV line method, what you can do is post this webinar. You can watch this video. It's an 18-minute video, but it discusses the number line method completely, and that would be good for you. Okay, so I'm also broadcasting it. So you can use this link to watch the number line method once. Okay, because I won't be discussing it elaborately in this case. I'm just going to tell you how to solve this particular question. Okay, so I have a lot of C's and I have a lot of and I have one D also now. Okay, so see, this is how you need to start solving this question. Obviously, the first step is to write down what is given. The good part is not a lot is given. It's just given that x is a positive integer. So we'll jot that down. And if I want, I'll write down a few numbers here just for my reference. And the question is simple, is x prime? Okay. Again, yes, no kind of question. So your job would be to try and see whether you can get always yes or always no. If you can, then that particular statement is sufficient. Okay. So let's take the first statement. X to the power 5, 5x to the power 4 plus 4x to the power 3 is less than 0. Now, the first step is pretty common, and I hope everyone did it, is that you take x to the power 3 common from all of them and write it like this. Okay. You have a quadratic equation out here, which can be written as x minus 1 times x minus 4 is less than 0. Again, the agenda is not to discuss quadratic equations, so I'm doing it directly. In case you are not aware how to do it, I would highly recommend looking at the quadratic video lessons. But the point is that you need to simplify it, okay? So simplification skill is definitely needed here. Don't plug in numbers. Now, remember that if you have something like this, x minus 1, x minus 4 equal to 0, and if you want to find out the roots, what do? You equate each of these terms, right, equal to 0, and you find out the roots. So x equal to 4, x equal to 1, and even if you have x cube, doesn't matter. X cube is equal to 0. So find these, okay? Always find these. And again, the thing that I'm talking about now is actually known as a number line method. So find out these roots and mark them on a number line, okay? And from the extreme right, start putting alternate signs, positive, negative, positive, negative. Okay. And once you so basically this tells me this is a positive range. These are values of x. So x equal to 5, x equal to 6, x equal to 7. These are values of x. If you plug it in the equation, this inequality, you would get greater than 0. If you plug a value x equal to 0, okay, you'll get less than 0, and so on and so forth. So this is the way that not 0, my bad, 0 is here. If you put a value like 2, then you'll get less than 0. Okay, so the idea here is that you this tells you what range of x would give you greater than 0 or less than 0. Okay, and what are we looking for? Well, the inequality that is given to us is less than 0. So we're looking for values of x which gives me less than 0. So you just look at the negative range. What is the negative range? This is the negative range, and this is the negative range. So you can say that the range of x would be between 1 and 4, and x less than 0, because this is also a place where you will get less than 0. However, once again, remember the question number 1, what we learned: constraint. So after getting the range, don't discard it. Go back and look what was the constraint. X is a positive integer. So if x is a positive integer, you don't need to consider this inequality because x cannot be less than 0. We know it's a positive integer. So we are left with this particular range. And since it's an integer, we can say the value of x can be 2 or 3. Now, if you are in that mentality, DS mentality, that I need to look for a unique answer and I'm not getting a unique answer, so this is like not sufficient, then you're falling for the multiple answer trap. If you discarded this because you got 2 answers and you thought of the multiple answer thing, think again. What kind of a question is this? This is a yes no kind of question. Now, if x is equal to 2, what is your answer? Is x a prime number? Your answer would be yes. If x equal to 3, what would be your answer? Is it a prime number? Your answer would be yes. And since you're getting a yes in both these cases, okay, since you're getting a yes in both these cases and a unique answer, when I say unique answer, because you need a unique yes or a unique no every time. So you're getting yes altogether, you would say this statement is sufficient. Okay, so I hope it's clear to everyone. Those of you who discarded this because of thinking that there are 2 different answers, I hope you won't make that mistake again. After getting those 2 answers, always check whether you're getting a consistent yes or no. Okay, I know I'm repeating a few steps, a few lines again and again, but I want that to get cemented in your mind completely. And we need to follow the same step here. Okay, so we write x to the power 7 minus x to the power 6 minus 12x to the power 5, and once again take x to the power 5 common. So x square minus x minus 12 is less than 0, and this gives us x to the power 5. Oh, just one sec, my bad. I hope now you're able to see it. Okay, I hope now you're able to see it. So I'll just repeat it quickly. I did not realize that the logo is there. So what you do is, after drawing the number line, make sure that you write positive, negative, positive, negative, okay? From the extreme right. Positive, negative, positive, negative, okay? And then since you're looking for less than 0, you take the range wherever negative is given. Okay, that is what I was talking about. In fact, I'll show it here also, so you'll understand this. So after taking common, again, there's a quadratic equation. You can write it as x minus 4 times x plus 3, yep, is less than 0. And once again, find out the roots. One of the roots is going to be x plus 3 equal to 0, or x is equal to minus 3. Mark that. The other root is x minus 4 equal to 0, or x equal to 4. And x to the power 5 equal to 0, which will give you x is equal to 0. And once again, start from the extreme right. Positive, negative, positive, negative. What are you looking for? You're looking for less than 0. So you're going to talk about these ranges. Now we already know, as per the constraint, x is a positive integer. So you don't need to worry about this range. You don't have to worry about x is less than minus 3, because that's not possible. So the range that you have is x is between 0 and 4. And here you have 3 values, 1, 2, 3. Now I don't have a problem with 3 values. Okay. But the thing is, when I ask myself, when I look at x equal to 1 and I ask myself, is it prime? My answer is no. Okay, so those of you who mark D thinking that 1 is a prime number, please remember prime number starts from 2. 2 is the only even prime number, and from there you move on to the rest of the odd prime numbers. Okay, so here my answer is no. But when I look at x equal to 2, my answer is yes, it's a prime number. And you can stop at this point of time. You can stop. You don't have even to check for x equal to 3. The moment you get 2 contradictory answers, you can say that this statement would be not sufficient. Okay, so if statement 1 is sufficient, statement 2 is not sufficient, then the correct answer is going to be option A. Okay, I hope, guys, this is perfectly clear. What do I mean by multiple answer trap? There's obviously simplification trap also in this case if you don't know how to simplify it, but it's more dependent on conceptual knowledge. So if you don't know number line method, I've already shared the link. Make sure that you look at it. Once you look at it, I'm pretty confident that you will be able to simplify it and solve it. So the only trap then you'll fall for is getting two different answers and thinking that I'm not getting a unique answer and marking the incorrect answer. So only when they ask you what is the value of x, what is the value of y, only in what is the value kind of question you look for a unique answer. Whenever there's a yes no kind of a question, you can get multiple answers as long as they're all telling you yes or all telling you no. Okay. So if you have any doubts, any questions, please feel free to ask. These are some of the takeaways I've already talked about, that we don't always need a unique value. And also don't think, if the good thing is that nobody marked E as the answer, which is a good thing, because a lot of people think, hey, it's a quadratic inequality, it's a five root inequality, so there's a good chance multiple answers will come. So let me just discard it. I've seen people do that, especially when I'm doing tutoring classes. I notice one of my students just doing it. So you need to ensure that you don't do such things. Okay. And I've already told you, only if it's a what is the value kind of question, then only you look for a unique answer. Otherwise, you don't. Okay. Okay, guys, here's the last question for today. And this is something which I've already done in one of the few webinars, but this does test what I want to test. So I thought I'll give it again. So again, you have 2.5 minutes to do this one. In case you have any questions to whatever we have discussed so far, please feel free to ask. Okay, guys, last 30 seconds. By the way, there's just one small information I'm adding here just in case. How much discount in dollars? There would be a in dollar mentioned here. Okay. How much discount in dollar is given on the third watch? So I'll give you another 30 seconds just in case if you want to change anything in your calculation, you can do that. Those of you who have got the answer, you can start putting in your responses. Okay, I've got one response. Prashant thinks the answer would be C. Okay, what about the others? The language is a little convoluted in this one, so I can understand if you are having a hard time deciphering this part. This is slightly tricky, I know. So I'll wait for another 15 seconds more and then I'll start the discussion. Okay, a lot of C's. 3 C's, 1 E. Hmm. Anyone else? Okay. Okay, let me start the discussion. Um, I don't think the answer is C or E. Both the answers, unfortunately, I think is incorrect. This is again a two variable translation kind of a question, okay? Where and I would say the translation plays a bigger role in this case because of the convoluted statements that are given. And especially you also need to take different variables to set up the equation. So if you don't set up it correctly, if you don't do your pre-analysis, there's a good chance you will end up falling for the C or E trap. Okay, so let me break it down again to you. How would I approach this particular question? So it's given that a certain electronic store offers a deal for its customers. Okay, so this information, there's literally no information here. Customer who buys 3 watches of model X, so 3 watches, watch 1, watch 2, watch 3 of model X, each having the same cost price. So I'll write CP, CP, CP. Okay, each having the same cost price. Pay the marked price for the first two. Okay, pay the marked price for the first two and a discounted price for the third one. So I'm paying a discounted price to buy it. Okay, so I'll write it as MP minus D, where D is the discount that was applied to it. And keep in mind that in a profit loss kind of a question, don't be afraid to take these variables MP, SP, CP, D. Believe in the process. If you're setting up the right equation, most of the stuff will get cancelled out somewhere or the other, or you'll realize what you are actually looking for. Okay, so that's like one of my number one advice in these kind of questions. Don't be afraid of taking variables. Okay, so till this part we are done. Now, the store makes half the profit from the sale of 3 watches. So the profit that I make from 3 watches, okay, is basically half of what? So the store makes half profit from the sale of 3 watches of Model X under this deal than. So now they're comparing it. So now I'll get to know half of what. Than it makes from the sale of 2 watches of Model X at marked price. Okay. So I'm making half the profit by selling 3 watches when compared to the profit that I'm making when I'm selling 2 watches at marked price. Okay, so this is my equation. This is how I need to translate it. Half profit of the comparison of profit is being drawn between the sale of 3 watches and the sale of 2 watches at marked price. Okay, how much discount, obviously, as I told you, in dollars would be given. How much discount in dollars is given in the third watch? So I'm looking for the value of D. Now, once again, don't move ahead. Don't think that this is done. Let me move ahead. See, you have taken these variables. So why not set up the equation? So what is the profit that I would make when I sell 3 watches? My profit would be total selling price. If I add all this up, I'll get 3MP minus D. So profit is basically selling price minus cost price. So this is my selling price. What is my cost price? My cost price is CP plus CP plus CP, 3CP. Now, I've seen people make the mistake of just taking one CP only. Instead of taking three, they write it as one and then they forget, or they don't even realize what does this CP signify. Is the CP for 1 watch or 3 watch? So another advice is whenever you take a variable, be very clear what does that variable signify. Is it for one? Is it for overall? What is it? Otherwise, you'll end up making a mistake. So what I do is in these kind of questions, I usually take it for a unit. And then if I have to multiply it with something, I'll multiply it because that's easy for me to remember for the sake of consistency. So in this case, if I look at the 2 watches, now if I sell 2 watches at MP, what is the profit that I'll make? Total selling price would be 2MP. Total cost price would be 2CP. Okay. So here I'm getting 3MP minus D minus 3CP. You can cancel out the 2's and get MP minus CP. Now you're looking for D. So keep D on one side, take D on one side and take everything else to the other side. So 3MP minus MP minus 3CP plus CP, which basically gives us D is equal to 2MP minus 2CP, or D is equal to 2 times MP minus CP. Now draw your inferences. okay, before going to the statements. Once again, keep in mind these are difficult questions. So in such difficult questions, it is very natural to spend about 1.5 2 minutes just doing this analysis, because during while analyzing the statement you'll be spending very less time. Okay, so don't get bogged down by this. Now see, this is how you draw an inference. Okay, the way I'm telling you, make sure that you do that in the exam. So whenever you have something like this, write down, make a mental note that I can get the value of D if I in two ways, and at least two ways that I can think of. One is if I know the individual value of MPCP. So if they tell me that MP is 100, CP is 80, if they give me the values like this, individual values, then I can get my value of D. Or else, if I can get the value of MP minus CP directly, if somebody tells me what is the value of MP minus CP, which is the profit of one watch, okay, even then I can get my answer. So with that in mind, you should go now and look at the statements. Okay. First statement is that MP is $30. The mark price of each watch is $30. So MP is $30. But remember, you have these two. So you can look at it. So to get the answer, you need the value of both MP and CP. Do you have it? No, you don't have it. Do you have the value of MP minus CP? No, you don't have it. So you will say this is not sufficient. Just knowing MP is useless. So see, while analyzing the statement, 15 seconds at the max, not more than that. Okay. Now, the profit on selling each watch of model X at marked price is $10. So what would be my profit in this case at marked, if I sell it at marked price? My profit would be MP minus CP because I'm selling at marked price. Now, MP minus CP has been given as $10. And remember, this is what we are looking for. So we can directly plug in our answer here, $10 here, and get the value of D. So the correct answer, which I think only two of you mentioned B as the answer, is going to be option B. As you can notice, a lot of translation is required here. I had to take MP, CP, D3 variables also, but as I told you, don't worry about taking variables. If you're setting up the right equation, everything falls into place. You'll get a expression which will be very symmetric, which would be meaningful. Okay. And obviously here also there are two variables, MP and CP. When I say two variables, I mean you can combine these two to get MP and C. So you might be very much tempted to think, okay, I have two variables whose value I need. I need the value of MP, I need the value of CP, and I can get both of these from these two statements. So let me mark my answer as C and move on. Okay. So once again, a typical trap. So whenever you're marking C as your answer, whenever you feel there are two variables which you're looking for and they're providing you, serving it on a platter, there's a good chance that they want, that you fall for that particular trap in this particular question. So if I have to summarize all my learnings, all the learnings of these 5 questions that I've discussed today, I would say number one is make sure that you have a very good conceptual clarity. Okay, so that you know what equations to take, what variables to set up. If you don't have conceptual clarity of topics, you would not know when to take MP, when to take CP, when to use the number line method. These things would become very difficult then. Okay. Number two is whenever you decide to discard an option, make sure you check your constraints. Make sure that you double check and ensure that what you're choosing satisfies all the constraint. Number three is whenever you see two variables in two different statements, and that is what you need, think twice before choosing it, because there's a good chance that you might need just one of the variables. So you need to do your pre-analysis really, really well. If you do your pre-analysis properly, I can guarantee you, you will be able to solve a lot of DS questions correctly, especially the difficult ones. Because easy ones, to be honest, can be done. Some of the easy ones can be done without pre-analysis, but most of the difficult questions, 650 plus, requires a little bit of pre-analysis. Okay. So that's it from my end, guys. If you have any other questions, any other, related to GMAT, GMAT Con, please feel free to ask. If you like this session, I would highly recommend to like this video, okay, so that it reaches to as many number of people. If you have any suggestions regarding these webinars, feel free to put it in the chat box. I'd be more than happy to, take it up in the next webinar. Any particular topic that you want me to take up, anything else that you want me to do differently in these webinars, please feel free to let me know in the chat box. In the meantime, I'm sharing the link of our Calendly once again, just in case if you want to talk to us later on, you feel free to uh, call with us. Here's the link. And as I mentioned that we are starting a crash course. So if you feel that you would like to attend these kind of sessions, structure your prep even more, then I would highly recommend looking at a crash course. But apart from this, I'm open to suggestions. I'll wait for another, I would say, 3 to 5 minutes, and then I'll end the session. You're welcome, Gautam. I hope all of you enjoyed this session. I hope it was fruitful. I hope these traps, you won't fall for these traps in future. At least be careful about them. And by the way, when you're creating an error log also, guys, you can create a column like this, okay, where you write down, since I've already told you how to categorize it. And I'm believing most of these DS questions can be categorized in these 4 to 5 ways. So if you can, if you want to just later on figure out what is the most, frequent kind of trap that you fall for, then you can use these 5 traps that I've mentioned and jot it down every time you solve a question. That way you can consolidate it later on, and then focus on the most frequent trap that you fall for. Okay. Okay, guys, so I don't see anything else in the chat box, so I am ending the session. Once again, feel free to write to us. You can see the email ID on the screen. If you have any suggestions, you can put in the chat box, or you can write to us also, and we'll take it up in the next webinar. Okay, I have one question. I'll take it up very quickly. Any suggestions for advanced percent problems? So what exactly do you mean by advanced percent problems? Are you just talking about 700 difficulty level questions? And what kind of mistakes do you make in these advanced percent problems? Because if you ask my opinion personally in advanced person problems, and by advanced I'm just assuming it to be 700 level difficult questions. If that is the case, then what I would say is that most of these advanced person problems are dependent on the skill of translation. So while you're solving these questions, in fact, there's a word problem webinar which I've taken. In fact, you should be able to find it on GMAT Club, or you can look at our channel also, where I talk about how to break down these advanced person problem questions. So what I mean by that is that in most of the difficult person questions or word problem questions, what happens is that they give you a lot of information, and in those kind of questions, mostly the numbers won't be given. So it's mostly like X, Y, Z, MP, those kind of questions where you have to draw inferences to solve the question. So if you don't set up your equations properly, there's a good chance that you will not be able to solve these advanced percent problems. The second thing that I would want you to check, and not only for advanced percent problems, but in general also, is how good are you at drawing inferences in difficult questions. Because if you're facing problems in advanced person problems, then there's a good chance that you might be facing inference problem in difficult questions also. So the issue might not be percents per se, the issue could be inference. You might not be drawing the right inferences when you're solving 7 level questions, because of which you might be getting them wrong. So if you want to improve in these two, I would recommend looking at these two aspects. One is breaking down and taking variables, not being afraid of it, and setting up the right equation. Second is to see whether you're drawing the right inferences when you're solving these questions. Because of these two reasons, people end up making a lot of mistakes. There's a good chance that, as I told you, that you, especially if you're making the mistakes in the mocks, then what I'm saying could be mostly correct, because in the exams you end up reading very quickly. And if you read very quickly, then there's a good chance that you might not be translating it properly, not drawing the right inferences to get the answer. So have a look at it. And if you still are not sure about it, then write to me, show me a few questions where you face a problem, and then maybe I can give you insights on where exactly you need to improve. Okay. Okay, guys, with this, I'm ending the session. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day then, guys. Take care. Bye.